Good afternoon, New Bedford. Here, Mike Sylvia with New Bedford Guide. We're here to continue on our candidate discussion. We're trying to get all the folks running for the October 1st election into our studio, ask questions. So today we're going to, actually right now, we have Paul Chasse. He's running for at-large city council. So welcome to the studio, Paul.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to ask everyone is why you're running for at-large.
Sure. So I ran 2 years ago for Ward 5 unsuccessfully. And at that time, I had a lot of folks come up to us and talk to us about, hey, gee, I wish I could have helped, or wish I could have voted for you. I live in a different part of the city. And, you know, over the last 2 years, we've taken a lot of time to think about what we wanted to do, and felt that I was born and raised in the north end of New Bedford and spent the last 11 years in the west end of New Bedford. So we thought it would be a natural fit to run for council at large this time around citywide. So we're getting a lot of positive support on that.
Let's talk some of the personal stuff. So how long have you lived in the city of New Bedford?
46 years.
46 years.
Yep.
And you have family?
Yes. Yes, we got a pretty good sized family, and extended family. My son has moved out of the area briefly, but my other son still lives with us. He goes to UMass Dartmouth, but both graduates from New Bedford High School. We're deeply rooted in New Bedford, and that's why I'm so passionate about what we're doing.
And tell me about your job.
Sure. So I'm the CEO of the Realtor Association of Southeastern Massachusetts. Basically what that is it's kind of like the Chamber of Commerce for real estate agents. So we have an association that provides education to realtors, and we do government advocacy a lot on the state and national level for private property owners and things like that. So that's what I equate it to. It's kind of like the Chamber of Commerce for real estate agents. That's what we do.
All right, we'll get into some of the questions for the candidate type for politics, political questions.
Sure.
So how would you define the role of the city councilor?
So I think the city councilor is definitely an important role in a lot of aspects, one being the budget. I understand, we don't create the budget, but the city council is responsible for finding areas to either cut or try to suggest reallocation in some respects. The city council also deals a lot with constituency services, and that is an area that I hope to bring some strong level of confidence to as well. I'm out there in the community all the time. My job is flexible per se, where I can help folks when need be. As long as I put my time in at work, as the executive, I'm okay. So I find constituency services to be a strong suit. And then, of course, the city council needs to monitor the city for economic development and in other areas. And, one of my areas of concern, not concern, but one of the areas that I'd like to focus on is economic development. In my role at the Realtor Association, I deal with a lot of housing-related activity, but we also deal with a lot of developers and small business owners as well. And there's a lot of talk out there about how some of the zoning issues that are happening and permitting processes and things that maybe we could look at tweaking or changing a few things here or there, zoning overlays, to really help our small businesses grow. There are a lot of small businesses out there that want to grow in the city of New Bedford, and sometimes have a hard time doing that. So that's an area of expertise that I'd like to focus on.
So if you have a question for Paul, throw it in the comments and we'll ask Paul the questions. So we'll move on. Let's say you make it past the first round, you actually get elected in November. What's your first priority as a city councilor in January?
My first priority is to get in and understand the landscape. So I've never been a city councilor before, so I'm the type of person that wants to completely understand what is happening at the time, in order to make the right decisions. So my first instinct is to go in there and scale the landscape a bit and understand the process and the procedures, and then begin to insert some of the areas that I want to look at, like economic development, like permitting, like zoning overlays, some of those areas to the city council.
I find when I do a lot of polls for New Bedford, like priorities from residents, that the number one is public safety. So do you have like a public safety platform?
Sure. So what I will say is that I was asked this the other night at the candidates forum: do you feel safe in your neighborhood, and what about other neighborhoods? So what I'll say is I'm very fortunate to feel safe in my neighborhood, but I know that is not the case around the city of New Bedford everywhere. And I think that when it comes to crime, we need to see a three-prong approach as of such. One being community policing and neighborhood policing. I strongly believe in community policing, and I think there's never enough of that to go around. And I think over the last couple of years, Chief Guerrero's done a great job of bringing that back, but we could do more. And so that is one area I think that would really help. Another area is the education system, the school system, particularly in the middle school level. So New Bedford now has been developing a dual enrollment program, not only for the high school to go into college, but also for the middle school to go into high school. And I've not worked, but met with a few kids being in the band over the last few years with my son, that's become very effective. So I'd like to see an expansion of the dual enrollment program in the middle school, because middle school is such a key time for kids, and the more we can get them engaged in education and going into the high school more engaged, I think the better off we're all going to be. So the key in education is some of those dual enrollment programs, to expand that program and really blow up the middle school and high school level. Between that and mentorships. So that's number two of the three-prong. And then the third prong is economic development. I can't say it enough, but a vibrant, strong, employed city typically tends to have less crime. And so we need to employ more people. Unemployment is low, but it could be lower, and the more economic development and opportunities we bring to the city residents, I think the better off we're all going to be.
Let's talk economic development. So New Bedford has historically had half the income of the rest of the state. So we do create, like, say, a market basket and kind of I would not say low skill, but lower income jobs. Is there a way to bring in the higher income jobs into the city of New Bedford?
So there are, and I think part of it is also taking some of those lower paying jobs and maybe increasing them. Because the fact is the lower the employment is, the more the employers are going to have to pay. It's just an economy of scale. So that goes for all businesses. When it comes to economic development, there are some things that I think would be beneficial to the city of New Bedford. One being the possibility of looking into a convention center. So convention center, right now in the city of New Bedford, I was amazed to find out, not really amazed, but it kind of hits you when you talk about it, that we can't hold more than 300 people in one function place in the city of New Bedford. We just don't have the capacity right now. And there are a lot of small to mid-size convention businesses and groups out there that look for convention centers. I'm not talking about a 10,000 person convention center, but something in the medium scale, anywhere between 1,000 and 3,000 or something like that. So it's areas like that we could look for opportunities to bring in. The other area is the entire waterfront area. We need to preserve it for the fishing, and it absolutely needs to be done. But there's so much property on the waterfront that we could do some mixed-use development between residential and commercial and small business. But we have to get past the multiple layers of zoning. There's zoning overlays down there that are just a mess, and we need to work on those areas, because as much as the downtown's starting to spread out, that entire waterfront has untapped potential.
Well, let's talk that. So we almost had a casino here. Did you support that when it was coming this direction?
So I would support any business that is going to support the city of New Bedford. That being said, it has to be in the right place, and it has to make sense with the community that we live in. A casino in a certain area of the city would not necessarily be a bad thing, but casinos aren't the only. It's not the only, sorry, pardon the pun, game in town. There are other businesses like convention centers, like mixed use development that we can do that will bring in economic development too.
Part of that plan was a convention center they were going to have. That was
Right.
one of the mayor's host city agreement parts, was to have a convention center as part of the
Right.
casino.
I don't think we necessarily need a casino for the convention center. I think the convention center, bringing groups into the convention center and then utilizing what we have in the city of New Bedford with the history and the museums and the food and the sites that we have, will easily accommodate the attractions that need to be brought in for the convention center.
Big thing in the state and New Bedford, addiction. Do you have a plan to bring more resources, or what's your plan to fight addiction?
So my plan is to rely heavily on the experts. And we have some good experts in the opioid task force group. And so I would like to work closer with them to continue the battle. And I think, I think the city of New Bedford has come some ways over the last couple of years, but we didn't get into this in a day, and we're not going to get out of this in a day. It's going to take a while. So I think we need to continue on the path that we're on. But I'll be the first to say, and this is what I say about a lot of different subjects, I'm not the expert. But what I will do is I will research, and I will make sure I understand what it is that's coming in front of the city council in order to make the right decision moving forward, whether that's opioids or anything else.
Well, I'll ask each candidate this question. Do you think addiction's a choice, or is it a disease?
So I have to say that it's, regardless of what it is, it's a danger to our society. I see both sides of the argument on that, to be honest with you. I do see a lot of folks that have struggled that didn't mean to struggle, that fell into it for one reason or another. But I've seen a lot of folks get out of it, and they've done it with hard work. So, I think, I just think that whether it's a disease or it's an addiction, I think we need to get to the root cause, and we need to better equip our city with dealing with the opioid crisis.
So on that, we'll go into the next thing, which, were you a proponent of the recreational marijuana into the city of New Bedford?
I am a proponent of recreational city, yes, having shops
Just
in the city
having
of New
it, yeah.
Bedford. Absolutely. The voters overwhelmingly voted for it.
So how do you think New Bedford's movement been on it? Is it too slow, too fast, not enough?
Yeah, I understand that they're trying to be careful, but at the same time, and understanding the fact that actually, in the very beginning, the state wasn't prepared to roll it out to begin with. So the state, had their troubles with their cannabis commission, and I think that delays a lot of the progress in the local cities and towns. That being said, I think we're at the point where we really need to move this forward. I see 3 host agreements that are currently being looked at, or whether they're actually finalized or not yet, but I think we need to expand on these host agreements, and we need to follow what the voters wanted, and it's tax revenue. As long as, like I said, it's like any business. It has to make sense for the area that it's in, though.
Yeah, the city council in Fall River is trying to push a cap. Some of the folks there, and the mayor vetoed it, so they actually passed it. Would you support a cap, or just let the free market kind of go where it's going to go?
So I would say I would start with the free market and see what happens. Obviously, if it's something that we have as a city a hard time handling, or it gets out of hand, then we'd have to re-examine that and make a decision as we go down the road. Part of the issue I'm seeing around the state is that when you only have 1 or 2, you end up with total congestion and total, the lines everywhere, and it's mayhem, and that's because there's only a couple of shops. If we have a few more shops introduced in the city of New Bedford, maybe we won't have that type of congestion, and it'll be more of like a liquor store where people go in and purchase their products, and they don't have long lines. So, we have to balance all of that out. Obviously, we certainly don't want to be known as a one-stop shop throughout the city of New Bedford for pot. But at the same time, I do believe in business, and I do believe in free market, as long as it makes sense in the neighborhoods that it's going to be in, and it doesn't jeopardize the safety of the city.
Big thing, complaints usually on social media is the potholes. Do you have an infrastructure plan?
For
Potholes,
for
infrastructure, yeah.
Yes. So, and I've been campaigning over the last couple of months, and that is what we're hearing the most is infrastructure, right? It's taxes and infrastructure. And what I'll say is that I can appreciate the parks and the walking paths and all the bike paths, and they did a great job with the the walking paths along the dams and stuff. But that all being said, we need to shift more resources into infrastructure, and part of that we need to advocate from the state for state funding. but part of that we can do ourselves. Being the chair of the New Bedford Redevelopment Authority, we work with a lot of ideas, and there are a lot of properties that New Bedford has in assets that we could look at down the road in selling, and for different reasons, one of them being infrastructure, but for funding other things as well. And I do believe that developers coming in would benefit from us selling some of those assets, and I think the city of New Bedford would benefit from receiving that money and allocating it towards areas like infrastructure.
Well, I'll ask a different way. Are you happy with the roads in New Bedford?
And that they could be better.
What would you
Absolutely.
do to do better?
Well, we would have to allocate more resources.
So spending, that's your
Sure.
primary. Okay. So I think last year the press release came out, it was like 10,000 potholes filled. I didn't know we had that many. But probably the same ones being refilled too a lot, right? So is there something specific you can point to besides just spending money? Like, what would you spend the money on? Is it new machines, or how would you do it? Have you looked at some of those cool videos online where it shows a machine comes and cuts a square?
Right.
So what do you mean by spending the money?
But the city of New Bedford has some of that equipment already. So I think we just have to get more aggressive out there in actually fixing them. But we only have so many in the city department. So, and that's the same city department that has to go and take care of something else on the fly when something happens. So, we have to look at the whole thing. We have to look at not only equipment, but we have to look at the personnel we have. But we also have to look at the road construction companies and the utility companies that come in and do work, and how they're responsible for patching up or fixing once they're done, and what level they do that at. Because I often think sometimes we don't hold them to a high enough standard, and then we're out a year later trying to fix it because it wasn't fixed properly. It wasn't put back right to begin with.
So taxes, we'll start with property taxes.
Yes.
One of the big things the city council has is the tax rate and the budget, right? For the mayor obviously has the most power on that, but property taxes keep going up. I think it was $220 residential last year for each house. I think the average house is now over $3,000, somewhere around there. Is there a way to get that down for property owners?
I think the first thing we have to do, and I'm a realist, is freeze taxes. So I understand we all want to lower property taxes, but we haven't been able to do that. And every time we try to lower property taxes, we just kind of throw up our hands up in the air a little bit and say, well, it can't be done. So I think the first step is to freeze taxes. So I'm probably one of the only ones out there advocating not for lowering property taxes, but let's freeze them. Let's freeze them for a year or two. And then let's take a hard look as to where we can find reallocation. Like I said again, we have opportunities, I believe, in the city, assets that we have that we could possibly sell or renegotiate on. And if that helps to pay for some of the infrastructure issues, well, maybe those infrastructure dollars can be shifted, and maybe we could save money on the infrastructure part, or other areas. I know there's only, at best, it's about 15% discretionary funding in New Bedford, so that makes it very hard to find areas to cut. And I do believe that city government has gotten leaner. But we have to find innovative ways. We have to do two things. We have to, one, find innovative ways to find cuts. But number two is to bring up revenue and drive revenue back into New Bedford. And that is done, like I said, through many different ways. One being some of the assets we have, and the other is streamlining processes so small business owners can grow and developers can come into the city and build faster and really distribute that wealth that we need.
Okay, we'll move on. So a big issue over the years has been panhandling. Are you happy with what the city council has presented, which is signs above their heads? The mayor has done those spiked cobblestones and the signs that just say, hey, don't give to a local charity. Is that enough, or What do you think?
I think that we as a city are tied, our hands are tied to some extent with the First Amendment, right, and freedom of speech. I mean, I can't tell you how many cities or towns across the state or the nation have tried to do something about this, and and it doesn't work, whether it ends up in court, we don't want to litigate on everything. And so we have to be very careful. Do the signs work? Personally, I think the signs weren't a bad idea. I think it had good intentions, but I don't think it's going to work. The spike strips in the middle, to be honest with you, I've seen a few areas where that has cut down on some of the panhandling. But the bigger issue with panhandling, again, is resources. And we can only develop more resources if we have more revenue coming into the city. We can only employ more people if we have more businesses growing in the city. And I think that needs to be part of what we do, is to provide more resources. If the panhandlers are going to be on the street, we need to find the root of the problem as to why they're on the street to begin with.
Let's talk residential waivers for jobs in the city. So it seems there's a lot of high-paying jobs that go to people from outside the city. It doesn't seem the city council does much to deny those, and it's usually the mayor's request, and the mayor does most of the vetting. But do you think the city council is doing a good job vetting, making sure New Bedford residents are filling the highest-paid jobs? Would you be very liberal on the residency waivers?
I feel like this city is a very important city, and we need to run it the best we can. So with city personnel, we're looking for the best personnel we can get, or whether they're in the city or outside of the city. That being said, if you have a couple of resumes and the qualifications are the same, you should pick a city resident every time. But if the qualifications aren't the same, if one resume is just a little better, or you have a lot of potential in one area, I'm always for hiring the best person for the job, because in the end, that's what's going to help the city out. And truth be told, a lot of the out of city waivers, come from. I mean, there are some that come from way out of the city, but a lot of them come from Dartmouth or Acushnet or Fairhaven, and those people do spend in New Bedford, even though they don't live in New Bedford. They go to Market Basket. We have people that come from Swansea and Mattapoisett and Marion to come to Market Basket. We have people coming into the city from Acushnet and Fairhaven and Dartmouth all the time, eating in our restaurants. So I don't see that we've lost all of the money we're paying them, because I do think they spend money in the city. They may not have the home in the city. They might not have a home at all. They may be renting, so there may not be necessarily tax dollars there either. But I just think that we want to hire the best people for the city of New Bedford. But if that all things are equal and we have a city resident that is that best person, then we should absolutely be hiring them.
All right, we'll do the last question. Public housing. Is the city have just enough, too much, or too little public housing right now?
So I'll tell you, that's a question that I haven't been asked yet, and don't have a lot of. I would have to look into it further, to really understand public housing, to know what we have in the city. Aside from public housing, just affordable housing, period. Well, I think we need more affordable housing, all in all. But affordable housing also comes with building and developing. And I think we still have areas that we can develop in the city of New Bedford, like down the waterfront area, like up near Church Street where the train platform is going to be. There are areas of opportunity where we could bring in condo lofts or apartments or mixed-use residential business, and I think that will help to drive that affordability, because we all know that if there's no place to stay, rents and the property prices are going to go up. So we need an influx of inventory, and I think there are ways to do that in the city of New Bedford. So affordable housing is really what we need to be focusing on.
Okay, so we'll end with this. How can people find you online, website,
Sure.
social media?
We're on Facebook at Paul Chasse. It's 2 S's, PaulChasse, Paul Chasse for City Council. Twitter is Paul Chasse NB, and Instagram is Paul Chasse. My email address is paulchasse@hotmail.com, again with 2 S's. And my phone number is 774-202-0535. I welcome folks to, shoot us an email, give us a call. We get people calling all the time, and I just show up at their house. I'll knock on their door and talk to them for a few minutes, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to develop conversations and really understand what the residents of New Bedford want.
Okay, so thanks for coming by. We want everyone, whether you vote for Paul or not, vote on October 1st.
Absolutely.
I believe there's 12 candidates total. You get 5 votes, up to 5 votes you get to pick from for the at-large, and the top 10 move on until November 5th. So if you like what Paul has saying, you can give him one of your votes. So thanks for coming in. Thanks for
Thank
tuning in.
you. Thank you.